Good evening, everyone. We shall start with the opening. Okay, so we do the 3 bows to the Buddha. First bow, second bow, and the third bow. Okay, and we do the opening chant, the homage. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. 3 refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. And the 5 precepts. Panatipada viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Kamesu miccācara viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Musāvāda viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Surameraya majapamadatthana viramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, and good evening, one and all. So we are continuing this topic called the Susima Sutta. I think this is the 3rd lesson already on this particular sutta. And very short, brief recap is about this, talking about the Buddha's, the religion flourishing. And we have this particular spy from another religious group, want to ordain and learn the secrets of Buddhism, how is it flourishing. So this monk called Susima managed to get ordained and become a Buddhist monk now. And he heard a group of monks, young monks, new monks, declare their enlightened in front of the Buddha. So he sort of interviewed them, asked them, is it true that you mentioned that no, you've reached enlightenment, you've ended this suffering and this birth? And this monk said yes, and this spy managed to ask them all these psychic abilities. Can you fly? Can you do all this telekinesis and stuff like that? And this enlightened monk said, no. Are you able to have the divine ear, hear long-range unseen beings? No. How about mind-reading ability? No. How about seeing past lives? Also no. So interesting. Arahants, enlightened monks can't see past lives. And can they see other people's past lives? The karma, the causation, what caused them to be reborn in the good and bad realms? They also say no. How about other kinds of meditative attainments, formless concentrations, no. So this Susima don't understand why so special about Buddhism, why you get so much popularity. So this time he went to ask the Buddha. He asked the Buddha, what's your trade secret? No, why these monks claim they're enlightened? What's so special about this enlightenment? So the Buddha explained this enlightenment or this specialty or uniqueness in Buddhism comes from the understanding of the impermanent nature of the 5 aggregates. Impermanent nature of the 5 aggregates. And understanding eventually impermanent suffering and non-self. So I think we covered until this for the previous lesson. So this is important to understand before moving on to dependent origination, which is the topic which Susan requested. Because if you do not understand the relationship of the 5 aggregates, a lot of people will tend to see dependent origination in terms of past life, coming to this life and the future life. And like earlier on, the Arahants, the enlightened monks, they can't even see their past life. So how can they see rebirth taking place into, from the previous life to this life? So that is the food for thought. So how do we really interpret dependent origination then? So we are going to explore this concept. Okay, so this Susima is able to understand the 5 aggregates based on this conversation or based on this teaching. Of course, in actuality, it may not be something like this. It may not be so short and simple. The Buddha may give instructions to Susima on how to meditate, instructions on how to see each aggregate. So this is the reciter's edition. So when the Buddhism is passed down through the so-called oral tradition, where it's passed down through the rote of mouth, they have to simplify it, make it easier to recite. So a lot of additions are made. So in actuality, how the Buddha gives instruction may not be exactly like this. So a lot of times you see in these ... or this repetition. Repetition. So the repetition is asking, do you see impermanence, right? And whatever is impermanent, is it stressful? Is it suffering? And whatever is stressful or suffering, do you consider it as you or yours, truly self? If everything is permanent and self, then it should be total happiness. You can tell it, I want this feeling to be happy forever. Something like that. So that is the concept. So whatever is not in your control, then you cannot truly call it as self. So this is the reflection. Okay, so so this particular verse, you can find it also in the discourse on non-self, and the second official discourse of the Buddha, Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. So whatever form or whichever the 5 aggregates, past, future, and present. So I always like to emphasize this. Reflection or contemplation or meditation doesn't always have to be present moment. Doesn't always have to be present moment, like when we do the impurities of the body meditation, when we think of decaying, birth and death of your hairs, your nails, teeth and skin. We need certain imagination, a certain memory of how we sort of view the hairs in the past, how they fall off. We have certain memory of how is it like. Or sometimes we may imagine the future, how the hair maybe turn color and fall off. So there's thinking of the past and present and future, past and future. So it doesn't necessarily have to be present. If we observe your hairs at the present, it may take a very long time to understand impermanence. Maybe one day the hair might grow, maybe how long, I don't know how long, maybe 3 micron or something. So that is take a long time to understand impermanence. So there is a bit of imagination involved, thinking of past and future, to create this sense of detachment, to understand impermanence. So like thinking of the Buddha, meditation on the Buddha's qualities. The Buddha was like 2,500 years ago, right? So that is thinking of the past. Yeah, thinking of the future also. One day I'll eventually pass away. There's a meditation on death. So that is a kind of reflection, right? So past, future, and present. And vice versa, a person can reflect wrongly. If a person thinks of past and future wrongly, without right reflection, they think of the past, then they start to fantasize or worry or daydream about the past. Yeah, so that could be one possibility if you reflect wrongly. Future, also the same thing. They might worry about the future or fantasize about the future, depending on what kind of feelings you have. If you have a pleasant feeling, you fantasize about the future. If you have an unpleasant feeling, then you worry about the future. And the present, also the same thing. If a person, I give an example, let's say those maybe influencer, bodybuilder, model, they always look at the body all the time. When they exercise, they're always mindful of the body, take pictures of themselves, take photos of themselves, always at the present. Yeah, but is there any sense of detachment? Right, so that's food for thought for you all. So any state of mind, wherever you want to think about, past, present, or future, if you have appropriate attention, if you have right reflection, then there is this sense of detachment. But if you have wrong reflection, then whatever you think, past, future, or present, it will create a sense of attachment. So that's the idea. Internal or external. Same thing, we can think of the body internally or externally. Wherever we place our attention, we can think inside or outside. It can be a cause of attachment, it can be a cause of detachment, depends on how you reflect. Blatant or subtle, gross, something tangible, something tangible or subtle. When we imagine the hairs, so that is imaginary, it's not the tangible stuff. Yeah. Common or sublime, so common emotions, greed, anger, happy, sad feelings. Sublime would be the sublime states of concentration, stages of insight. So all these are sublime. So whatever states of mind also can be a cause of attachment or detachment. So interestingly, if a person is, I think I've talked about this before, even when they practice impermanence halfway, and if a person experiences the 7 factors of awakening, 7 factors of enlightenment, you suddenly feel joyful or feel tranquility, then they want to stay there. Wow, so nice, I want to stay there forever. Then becomes attachment already. Then they will lose everything. So that is, you need right reflection. So near or far, also the same thing. You may hear news of some events far away, or it could be something nearby, your hometown. Also can practice attachment or detachment. Okay, so whatever it is, you need your 5 aggregates to pay attention to these events. Yeah, past, present, future, near, far, whatever. So you need to reflect it as not ours. Yeah, so the Buddha gave a few these questions before coming to this non-self. You need to ask questions on impermanence first. Start off with impermanence. Is it stressful? Before you derive the conclusion of not self. Yeah, is it yourself or not? So before coming to this conclusion of not self, one should reflect on impermanence first. So this is our standard guideline. In fact, in the Satipatthana Sutta, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, it is clearly mentioned this mindfulness of impermanence, the arising and passing, is the only way. Mindful of the body, feelings, mind, and the Dhamma, that it is impermanent. That is the one method, one and the only method. So similar for the 5 aggregates, same repetition, near, far, past, present, future. Okay, so what will happen is, seeing thus, the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones grows disenchanted with form, disenchanted with feeling, disenchanted with perception, disenchanted with fabrications. So that's the 4th aggregate. So this is Ajahn Jeff's translation. The more common translation would be mental formations. Disenchanted with consciousness. So these are the 5 aggregates. So once they're disenchanted, he becomes dispassionate. So means no more passion, no more greed or hatred arising to cling onto those states of these 5 aggregates. Through this passion, he is fully released. So a person let go, release, with full release. So there's normally we think one time people, oh, so easy to get enlightened. You just think impermanence and non-self. Oh, I get released already. Not that easy. So this release is a process, and eventually, if you reach the end goal of the journey, so the journey depends on each individual, depends on their faculties, how much effort they put in, how much wisdom they have, how much mindfulness they have, and so on. So eventually, when they reach the end goal, which is the full release, there is knowledge, fully released. He discerns that birth is ended, the holy life fulfilled, the task done. There is nothing further for this world. So this is the declaration. This formula, you can find it in a lot of suttas. When any monk sort of, when they reach enlightenment, they'll make this statement. Fully released, he discerns that birth is ended, the holy life fulfilled, the task done. There is nothing further for this world. So this is the statement they'll normally make. All the reciters like to give this chorus. We call this repetitive formula for any enlightened monk's finishing. Right? So this is the finishing statement, end statement for enlightened monks. Okay, so what happens next is interesting conversation between the Buddha and Susima. So this is now on dependent origination in actual. So the Buddha will ask Susima, Susima, do you see that birth as a requisite condition? There is aging and death. And Susima replied, yes, Lord. So this one is asking in reverse order. So this birth, currently we take it 2 options first. So this birth, it can be a physical birth or the birth of the mental 5 aggregates. That means wherever we place attention, the experiencing of the world, your eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, with the 5 aggregates, the 4 elements, the feelings, the perception, so the birth of all these. So this is, you can find this definition in the Paticca Samuppada Vibhanga Sutta, the analysis of the dependent origination. So the definition of birth is this. It can be a physical birth, as in the labor, the mother gives birth to the child, that kind of birth, or it could be a conception, the moment the fetus is born within the womb, or it could be the birth of the 5 aggregates. So it's a wide spectrum of definition. So for this particular case, if you talk about arahants who cannot recall past life and stuff like that, they will restrict themselves to seeing birth as in the birth of the 5 aggregates. The every moment 5 aggregates. It's not until the previous life or the next life. Okay, then the next think the Susima answered, yes. Yes, Lord. And the Buddha further asked him, do you see that from becoming as a requisite condition there is birth? So interesting question. So there's a becoming before birth. So becoming, as in my interpretation, would be the sense of self appearing. Sense of self appearing. So this becoming, you can become, there are three definitions: sensual becoming, form becoming, and formless becoming. So sense becoming is our sense spheres, our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, our sense desires, the sensual world. So when we cling on to the sense world, then a certain personality will arise. So that is sensual becoming. So if a person is attached to form concentrations, then form becoming will arise. That is the first to the fourth jhanas. So every time in our routine, when we sort of enter states of calm, states of concentration, I always remind you all, treat this as a byproduct, part of a bonus. Keep on emphasizing on the right thought, keep generating right thoughts, don't cling, don't park, do not stay put, do not stay still at the peaceful sensation. So that is the idea, not to cling, not to become with the form concentrations. So likewise, the same for formless concentrations, the fifth to the eighth level of concentrations. If a person idles there, stay put there, then it becomes formless becoming. Yeah, so these are the three kinds of becomings. Yeah, so this becoming causes birth. So if a person sort of be attached, yeah, sort of become, I want this experience. This experience is part of me. This is my experience. So this is a kind of becoming. Yeah? All right. So when the I is there, my experience. So there is a becoming. So the Susima answered, yes, Lord. Do you see that from clinging? So this clinging means addiction or sustenance as a requisite condition, there is becoming. So in order for this arising of this ego, this sense of self, you need to cling first. So very interesting. You need to cling, have an addiction first to form a personality. So this is the Buddhist version of psychology. Probably in Western psychology, some models you need a personality first before they sort of come up with a certain behavior, whereas the Buddhist version is the other way around. Personality comes after craving, after craving and clinging. So this is the Buddhist version. Okay, then Susima also said, yes, and what comes before addiction? What comes before clinging? And do you see craving as a requisite condition for clinging before addiction? So you need to crave first. So this craving is our reaction, our self-made, self-inflicted suffering. Self-inflicted suffering. So in the Four Noble Truth formula, the cause of suffering is craving. Cause of suffering is craving. So once we crave, all these become like domino effect. It comes naturally. Once you crave, then naturally you cling, you become a personality, and that personality will experience these birth, aging, sickness, death. You experience the dramas of this personality. Yeah, so this is from craving. So this is the man-made suffering, our own self-inflicted suffering. So do you see from craving as a requisite condition, there is clinging? So Susima answered, yes, Lord. And what comes before craving? Do you see that from feeling as a requisite condition, there is craving? And Susima answered, yes, Lord. So from feeling, so feeling onwards is part of the 5 aggregates. So earlier on, we talked about first understanding the 5 aggregates, right? So 5 aggregates, by right, is a natural phenomenon. We can't do much about it. It always arises, always arise, and arise. And interestingly, these natural occurring 5 aggregates also is part of this birth of the 5 aggregates. The difference is the initial 5 aggregates, if we do not react with craving, no suffering. Even though there is unpleasant feeling, there is physical kind of and also mental kind of unpleasant feeling. But if you crave, if you react with aversion, you fight the unpleasant feeling, then you're creating this unnecessary suffering. You're creating this chain, these dramas and all this suffering. So these feelings that was born, that sort of appear naturally by itself all the time, if we do not react with craving, then it sort of ends there. It's sort of, it's a natural thing. I normally give example, like in meditation, we talk about a lot of distraction there in meditation. People make noise, or my neighbor make noise, the weather too hot, too cold. So all these stimuli, all these feelings, all the other aggregates are a bit like, let's say we are taking a public transport. Let's say we are taking a bus or a train, and if let's say people are having conversations in the bus, you don't have to reply to everybody having that conversation. You don't have to chip into that conversation and talk to everybody. It's like you mind your own business, right? Because all of them, you do not know them. And they might find it's, hey, why you people, why you interfering with our conversation? So you kind of like mind your own business. So if you mind your own business, so all these other people's interaction are like the natural occurring 5 aggregates. When they appear, you just leave them be. You mind your own business. But once you want to eavesdrop in their conversation, in your mind wants to narrate, wants to be part of their drama, then you crave, you cling, you create your own story, you become part of their drama, you become part of their plot, part of their story, and then you have the birth and death of their dramas. You experience the birth and death of their dramas. So this is craving and the cause of suffering. So the Susima said, yes, Lord, and he sees that feeling is the condition before craving. Okay, then what comes before feeling? Do you see contact as a requisite before feeling? And Susima said, yes, Lord, and he sees contact. How about the 6th sense media before contact? Then he said, yes, Lord. Okay, I will move through the points fast because there's a certain relationship. Do you see that from name and form as a requisite condition, there are 6 sense media? Say, yes, Lord. Do you see that from consciousness as a requisite condition, there's name and form? And Susima said, yes, Lord. Okay, so what's the relationship between consciousness, 6 sense media, and contact? Yeah. So, and of course, name and form. Okay, so the Buddhist formula, they will normally say your organ, depending on your 6 sense media. That means your senses, your eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So we are going to use one organ as an example, using your eye, your eye organ, your eye medium. So depending on your eye, depending on the external visual object, then eye consciousness will arise. So that external object is a form. The consciousness that arises, your eye consciousness arise is the nama aspect, is the mental aspect. So together they're called name and form. So these two cannot be separated. You cannot say, I see an object without having an object there. You need something there for you to see, even if it's a blank space. So that blank space, it could be, something, yeah? So even in the darkness of space, it's still black. So that pitch black, the fact that you're able to see the pitch black, so there's name and form involved. So the form is the pitch blackness, and mental aspect is your eye consciousness, able to see that pitch black. So that is name and form. So name and form is involved, and the meeting of the three things, depending the meeting of your eye organ, the meeting of the external object, the form. It could be your computer screen, it could be your handphone, so that's the form. Then the meeting of this eye consciousness that arises, the meeting of the three things is called contact. So that's the relationship. So that's the order. So it's it's not really like consciousness first, before name and form, before sense, media, and contact. So these are like a package. It comes together. Yeah. So that's why you need to understand the 5 aggregates first, because the 5 aggregates comes as a package. And interestingly, mental formation is part of the 5 aggregates. So I continue the passage. Do you see that consciousness is a requisite condition for name and form? And Susima said, yes, Lord. Do you see that from fabrication, mental formations as a requisite condition, there is consciousness? And he said, yes, Lord. So mental fabrication is the moment the thought arises. Mental formation, to form the thought. So why is for example, I always like to do the pointing experiment. Can you point to your attention now? So your attention is this, your consciousness, your awareness. Like if you're seeing with your eyes, so I'm looking at the screen now, so my awareness and my attention is to the screen. But if I stop speaking, where's your attention now? Right? So the mind will be running around. So the formation of that thought to make your attention volatile, that's why there's another term for it, volition, the Chinese called xing, to move to form that consciousness, to form that thought, that is called mental fabrication. So you need this in order for this to arise. So every moment there's something forming, Why you're feeling unpleasant feeling? Because of fabrication, and because you're aware of this unpleasant feeling. Yeah, so and so on and so forth. All these are related. It's a package. Yeah? So do you see that fabrications as a requisite condition, there is consciousness? And Susima said, yes, Lord. And pardon me, I need to... Okay, do you see that from ignorance as a requisite condition, there is fabrication? And Susima said, yes, Lord. So ignorance is the only one that's not part of the 5 aggregates. So ignorance is the starting point of the dependent origination. Yeah, so from ignorance, condition fabrication, condition consciousness, and so on and so forth. So this is the mode. We call this the forward order, on how this psychological analytical process of how attachment, clinging, and suffering come to be. So this is the process from not knowing. So as long as we are not enlightened, we will have ignorance. So only an arahant, only an enlightened being will not have ignorance. So that's why in the practical sense, that's why the Four Noble Truths, the cause of suffering is not ignorance. The cause of suffering is craving, which is the previous slide, sorry. Yeah. The cause of suffering is craving. The Buddha don't start off the cause of suffering is ignorance. How to work on ignorance? Yeah? If a person straight away can solve ignorance, then they're enlightened already. So that is the mode. So this is from the forward order from an enlightened person when they are able to see the entirety of how this ignorance arise from this fabrication and consciousness, name and form and stuff like that. So the reason why our why we can experience this movement of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, why we are able to pay attention with our sight, our hearing, is due to not knowing. Yeah, so an enlightened person, we'll talk this in the next lesson. Due to time constraint, we've covered until we covered the content for half an hour. I don't want to go too long. If not, too much content will cause some mental constipation. Okay, so there's the sharing. So I'm going to open the floor to Q&A. Any questions on the ground? Anyone?
Bante, a quick question. Just now from the passage, the name,
Yeah.
the consciousness, and the one before that was the fabrication. To me, they are very similar. No, it's a mental formation, a form of mental formation, or they are very different.
Yeah, in actuality, it's 5 in 1. The 5 aggregates, they operate, they come all in one go. Huh? Yeah, so that's why we start off with first understanding the 5 aggregates.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about the passage seems to separate them, the name, consciousness, and the fabrication. In practice, is it important to differentiate this level? Or
in theory, yes, but in practice, no. In practice, actually not necessary. This is more for like a scholarly kind of understanding. Yeah, scholarly understanding. So I'm going to do a share screen again. So you're talking about this, right? Fabrication, consciousness, name and form, yeah, and all those, right?
Yeah.
So it actually happens very fast. So if let's say your if a person's mind become more sensitive or your mindfulness is sharpened through more practice, then maybe you are able to see the process, from the thought arising to all this happening very fast. So this one need more practice. So again, we are going to talk about the common mainstream model. The mainstream model will equate this fabrication as past life karma. So another translation, they call it karmic formations. So once they have karma, they'll push this consciousness to the womb. Push this consciousness to the womb. So that's the majority or the mainstream understanding of the educational institutions. They will equate dependent origination as this. The fabrication as the past life's karma. It will direct your consciousness to name and form. So the name is this consciousness and the form is to the mother's womb. So this is basically conception. So during the formation of the fetus, then the 6 senses will form and so on. So that is the understanding of the mainstream. So I'm going to move to the previous slide. And once a person has this, the fetus is forming, then eventually the birth is actually the mother's labor. So all this process is during the fetus born at time. So very hard to practice meditation with all this in your fetus. So the only thing that is present is this birth and aging and death, which they call this sort of, which is what we are going to experience or in the future. And this one we may experience, they mentioned we may experience all this. So in order to truly understand dependent origination, for some schools, they believe you must see past life. You must see your past life, how this consciousness enter to this womb. But from the previous slides, the Arahants, they claim they cannot see their past life, so how can they see this consciousness entering to the womb, right? So that is the question. Okay, so that's the comparative study of the scholastic, more, we call it superstitious model versus the moment-to-moment dependent origination model. Yeah.
So,
okay.
Bhante,
Yeah.
Are you saying that because in this sutta, the Susima sutta, Susima asked the Arahants and they said they didn't see their past lives and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So does that necessarily mean that the way to interpret the 12 links of dependent origination is therefore the thought moment to thought moment model, and the one that about seeing past lives and having physical birth is actually incorrect? Does that make it incorrect?
Seeing past life is another phenomenon. It's another phenomenon. Yeah. So the way to detachment is the moment to moment, the more transcendental understanding of dependent origination.
So then, where does that some people have the understanding that he's referring to physical birth and the physical world for these 12 links of dependent origination. So is that based in some other sutta, or where does that thinking arise?
Yeah, okay. So I did share this in a previous, I think last year's talk on dependent origination. So I'm going to share again. Okay, so from this example, there's a particular sutta called the Maha Sutta on the Great Causation, where the Buddha gives an example. It's more like a case study where the Buddha, the case study talks about this, where consciousness descends to a womb, then there's a rising of this name and form. Right? So when the Buddha talked about this consciousness descending to a womb, this consciousness is not the same as these dependent originations consciousness. It's a different example. He's using another example to try to explain when life starts, then there will be name and form. So that's the example the Buddha gave. So the further down, if a person wants to take a complete context of this consciousness the Buddha was referring to, the Maha Sutta at the later end talks about different stages of consciousness. The different realms of existence have different kinds of consciousness. Whereas in the dependent origination, the consciousness is referring to this six sense-based consciousness. So this Paticca Samuppada Vibhanga Sutta, the analysis of dependent origination, talks about consciousness as the six sense basis, depending on your eye, the form, and eye consciousness arise. So you need a current existing body for this consciousness to arise. So this consciousness doesn't jump from one body to another body. So it's a different context. It's for example, like you cannot say depending on your eye, depending on the form, then you need to pass away, then you need to enter a womb, right? So it's very ridiculous. So it's different definition of consciousness used in different contexts. So a lot of times people switch context. They use the kind of consciousness that go from birth to birth into dependent origination. So that's why we have a lot of confusion nowadays. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yep.
Bhante, I have two questions.
Yep.
The first one is, there was a slide with the two hands whereby you spoke about fully released, and you mentioned something along the line of depending on one's faculty, wisdom, etc. So on the term of faculty, are you referring to the mental faculty like faith, confidence, energy, mindfulness, etc.?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Okay, and that's the only set of faculties that we're talking about in this context.
Yeah, 5 faculties. You can add more to the list. You can reduce. Yeah, but minimum we talk about this 5. Yeah.
The 5 faculties. Okay.
Yep.
The second question that I had is if we can, so if we refer back to the dependent origination that you're talking about, so it seems to me that the becoming side, because we spoke about sense of self, which is formless, form, and sensual,
Yep.
it sounds to me it's like tanha, becoming and non-becoming. But my understanding of tanha that is also craving, which then brings me to the question of what is the difference between becoming and craving?
Okay, so I'm going to, share the screen again. Let me find the share screen button. Okay, so if a person, let's say they enter concentration, right? Can be any concentration. Let's say they enter, for example, the 3rd jhana, for example. So the 3rd jhana also is part of the 5 aggregates. You need fabrication to form the jhanas. You're aware of the jhanas, you're aware of the jhana factors. There's happiness, there's a happy feeling and a happy emotion and stuff like that. So there's name and form. So it's there's the jhanas have certain probably shape to it. That's why it's called the form concentrations. Then at this point of time, a person is quite withdrawn from the senses. So a person is not a sense sphere becoming. It's called the form becoming. So much lacking on this one. So there is contact to this mind, this state of mind, this particular jhana. There's a contact to this jhana. And I'm going to press the previous slide. Okay, then when a person experiences the jhana, they may have certain feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling. So some may think, how can jhanas have unpleasant feeling? Yes, they can. If they have craving, they want to force the mind. Sometimes if a person is a bit, have this compulsive disorder, a bit control freak, when they coerce the mind too much, there might be some aversion, some unpleasant feeling to the jhanas, and this is where craving come to play. So if the jhanas have a pleasant feeling, they will cling to it. So this is the reaction part. So if a person already in the jhanas, they will crave for it, they will cling, and they become this, this is my jhanas, this is my experience. So the sense of I, my, so this is the becoming. So this is a part of me. So this is the becoming part. So it's every moment. So so this is happening every microsecond. So once a person become this, ongoing at the same time, there's another incoming feeling of these jhanas they're doing. Then either they crave for it or they stop craving and stuff like that. So if let's say a person do crave halfway, if they're mindful, they can have the right reflection. Like in our routine, we have a reflection on impermanence to sort of detach from the clinging and becoming of this the form concentration. So they we stop this. So at the meantime, there's this thing going on, and if a person continuously have this detachment, when the conditions are right, they experience this thing called cessation. So once a person experiences cessation, we'll talk about this more in the next lesson. So next lesson, it talks about the disappearance of everything. Yeah.
Maybe I don't have the wisdom.
Okay.
But it seems to me more like the craving is like the urge, the impulse, and then the becoming becomes like you solidify to a self. Is that the understanding? Okay, thank you.
Quite close, yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Pate,
Yep.
The becoming, is it the concept of self, right? So it's the opposite of anatta, right?
Yep.
The non-self. Okay.
So that's why, sorry, I always pressed the wrong button. So I do the screen share again. So that's why, before a person practice non-self, we practice impermanence first. Impermanence to reduce this craving, which is craving either greed, hatred, and delusion. So impermanence will reduce greed and attachment. Greed and attachment. So once a person reduces this, then they will experience non-self.
Okay.
The sense of self will reduce. So it's more of an experiential thing, the non-self. So that's why it's not a theory thing. So when we read the suttas, people think, you need to come a logical conclusion on non-self, and then they reflect this logical thing, but the craving is still there. So no matter how they logic, this craving is still there. This is my logic. This is my reasoning, and this is my understanding of non-self. So the self and the ego is still there. So that's not the way to break this. Break the chain. So it always starts off with impermanence. So once there's real detachment, then the non-self become more evident. So in our routine, I always ask a question. One may or may not experience it. Like let's say the impurities of body meditation, the more we reflect on the impermanence of the 5 aggregates, I will ask whether the sense of self increases or decreases. And I will also ask, is the sense of self real? Is the self truly self? So the self actually appears after craving. But normally we live with this unmindfulness. Then we think, the self, me is me. The me is so real. Like 24/7 always there. I am I. Correct. No, what's wrong? So it's the hardest thing to break actually. Only an Arahant can overcome this conceit of I am. So only an Arahant can overcome ego. So the sense of self have different layers. So like a stream enter will break away a bit of this self-identity view first, slowly chip away, and eventually talk about this ego. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Bante.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay, so it's a cheap topic. Because dependent origination is an experiential thing. So only a fully enlightened person can understand. So the way Susima answered is if he already reached enlightenment, if he reached Arahant, then he fully understand. Yes, he understood. So for us, we may take some time to understand the entire process, need more time to reflect and understand. Okay, so yeah.
Can you please explain more on the consciousness? The consciousness in the 5 aggregate is when you, I get confused because like when you have mental formation and then the consciousness, how do you explain that? How do you explain that? Because you already have the mental formation. Isn't that a conscious?
Okay, like right now you're paying attention to my voice, right?
Yeah.
But if I stop speaking, your attention is to somewhere else, right? So the moment your attention runs to another place, that is a formation.
Okay. But the consciousness,
it needs to form, right? It needs to form somewhere else. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? Any questions? So if one deepen this understanding, then you can use this for your investigation. So knowing some theory is good, so you have more things to investigate. Yeah. You have something.
Sorry, Bante.
Yeah.
One question to follow up with what Sister Alice was asking.
Okay.
So my understanding was always when there's a consciousness, for example, I see char kway teow, then I will have the mental thoughts which will eventually come to the fabrications in this case. So now we are saying that it's the fabrication first, then the consciousness.
Yeah.
So it's more of my thought. So it's the thought that of the char kway teow, then because I see it, then sorry, I confused. I don't really understand. Because always it's like, okay, I see it, then that is char kway teow.
Okay, now we are going to do a random experiment. Now we zobo and do nothing. Just do nothing now. Are there thoughts forming in your mind?
Yes.
So this is called mental fabrication. They form by themselves through the mind door. But if we are aware of it, then it's called mind door consciousness. So likewise, there are many, many stimuli happening, many thousand and one stimuli happening, but we may not be paying attention to them. So there's we are not aware of them and there's no contact with them.
So we are perceiving things through the mind door.
Yeah, if we imagine the char kway teow, yes, yeah. So the more we think on the char kway teow, so delicious, is it delicious or not? Is it cheap or not? Is it expensive? So that is craving already. So the more we have craving, the more the secondary thought onwards. The initial thought actually no suffering. The random formation, no suffering. But our reaction, I want this char kway teow. So once you have the craving, then we'll form story law. Then the dramas, the char kway teow, is it delicious? What's the taste like? Is it salty? Is it sour? Is it whatever? Then we become part of we become the diner. We become the consumer. So that's the becoming. So once you become, then we will have the suffering of that diner. We feel hungry, we feel dissatisfied, or we feel full. So that's the birth, aging, sickness, and death of that person. Yeah.
Okay, I rephrase again. So when we have the mental formation, we give a thought, then we were like giving the thought some valuation. That's the consciousness. Is that correct?
No evaluation yet. Once you're aware, so that's the consciousness already.
Oh, okay. The moment you're aware.
Yeah, the moment we start to add more salt and vinegar, add more pepper, 加盐加醋, add more stuff, that is craving already.
Okay.
Any kind of reaction to it, yeah.
Okay. So the thought arise is consciousness.
Yeah, as long as you are aware of it, so that's consciousness, yeah.
Aware, okay, the awareness, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes we may not be aware. Let's say you're looking at the screen, you're not aware of what your mind is thinking.
But the consciousness is already there, right? It's already formed. We are not aware, but the consciousness is
the
there.
Consciousness is somewhere else. You're using eye consciousness, your ear consciousness. So it's forming somewhere else. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So at the five senses, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, six senses.
Yeah, six senses. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, very hard.
Yeah, so this is for you to look out for and investigate in your meditation. Huh?
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? If not, then we go for a 5-minute break. Let me look for the slide with the 5-minute break sign. Okay, I found it. Let me share screen. Okay, so we're going for a 5-minute break and see you later for the guided session. Not much time for the guided session also. Okay, let's see who else has returned. So actually by analyzing and going through the step-by-step in theory, the dependent origination is a bit of meditation already, part of investigation, reflection and investigation. Okay, anyone else have further queries before we start? Okay, if not, we are going to start the meditation. Can mute ourselves, find a comfortable position, make sure your back is upright and the rest of the body relaxed. Okay, so the first thing, same routine, learn to detach from the body using the impurities of body meditation. So this imagination is using the mind sense door, mind door consciousness. So we're going to visualize the parts of the body, starting the hairs of the head, hairs of the body, and we are going to wish them well and happy. So part of the process when we sort of think of this right thought, well and happy, is to reduce this craving. Every time we generate a new image, new patch of hair, that is new contact, new this mind or consciousness, new contact, new feeling, whether the hair is ugly, the hair is beautiful, so that is new feeling, new contact, and we need to overcome it by, or overcome or prevent this craving by generating thoughts of loving kindness first, wish the hairs well and happy, new patch of hair, wish the hairs well and happy. So when the mind is more settled down, that is reducing of certain craving formations. So loving kindness may generate a certain level of peace to a certain degree. And once you find your mind relatively calm, then we're going to introduce a thought of impermanence. So this will reduce this greed and clinging. So all these hairs go through birth, aging, sickness, and passing away. So we need to sort of deliberately think of the hairs growing and falling, many, many cycles. So no need to over-dramatize the process. Don't need to think of what shampoo you're using, what kind of conditioner, just hairs growing and falling. So this is the only imaginative part. And at the meantime, we are going to observe the arising and passing of the 5 aggregates. So that would be the real-time evidence. So when we think of the hairs growing, what kind of feelings do we have? When the hairs fall down, what kind of feelings do we have? When the hairs grow, what kind of perception is that? When the hair fall down, what kind of perception is that? So on and so forth, the rest of the aggregates. So every time we generate a new image, hair growing, that's a new mental formation. Hair falling, that's another mental formation. And consciousness, when we think of the hair growing, that's using mind or consciousness. And we think of the hair falling, that's another mind or consciousness. So it's always happening. Okay, then we can observe the more we think of impermanence, is there more attachment or detachment? And with, if let's say there's detachment, will the sense of self or the selfishness increase or decrease? And with more detachment, will the thought formations become more obvious or less obvious? Is it starting to get more agitation, or is it getting like fading away, like start to, like getting disappearance? So when the mind gets more calmer and calmer, gets more subtle or more refined, it's a releasing process. So it's not yet fully released. Fully released is that's enlightenment. So this is still part of the journey. So every time we practice, or every moment, we can keep track of our high score. How much can we detach? How much can we calm the mind down? And now we move on to the next sense object. We're going to think of the nails, fingernails and toenails. So when we think of that object, can you still maintain the sense of detachment? How about the sense of self? Is it appearing or disappearing? And when we think of the nails, we start off with loving kindness again, wish the nails well and happy. So this is a wholesome thought, but not yet impermanence. So when we wish these nails well and happy, probably a certain kind of personality, a certain kind of emotion. And once our mind is quite calm, then that's the conducive state of mind to think of impermanence and detachment. So we are thinking of all these nails, how they go through this birth, aging, sickness, and passing away, how they keep growing and falling, many, many cycles, keep looping this image. And at the meantime, we take note of the arising and passing of the 5 aggregates. Okay, and we can observe this mind, is it more detached? The more we think of impermanence, how much detachment can we create? Okay, then we can ask ourselves, is this self, truly self? Which part of the 5 aggregates is you or yours? Okay, then next we are experimenting with another sense door. Now no longer visualization. We are moving to the bodily sensations. We are going to feel the 4 elements. No need to visualize anything. We are not using the mind sense door anymore. Now we are using the body sense door, your nervous system. So we are going to feel the 4 elements. So they are called earth, fire, wind, water elements. Earth represents any hard or soft sensations. Fire would be hot and cold. Wind, any kind of movement, fast or slow movements. And water, moist or dry. So for this particular routine, totally no control at all. That means do not purposely generate those sensations. Let it arise naturally by themselves. So it's total real-time observation. So we are doing the same right thought. Every time a new sensation appears, we wish it well and happy. Every time we do not generate right thought only, we'll get dragged away by these nice or unpleasant feelings of those sensations and create lots of dramas. So that is just the elements only, and together with the elements, there's also feelings. Maybe some of the sensations can be pleasant, some of the sensations could be unpleasant, some of them are neutral. So whatever sensations, whatever feeling that arise, we wish them well and happy. So we make peace with all the contact, all the feelings. So just wishing them well and happy is just a samatha phase to calm the mind down without amounting to any jhanas yet. And we can now do the insight part. We are going to think of impermanence. So we're using real-time evidence. Whatever you observe, all these sensations, we observe how they arise and pass away. All these elements, all these feelings, are they permanent or impermanent? And if you try to control them, will there be suffering? So if you do not want to suffer, then continue with this reflection on impermanence and see how far the mind can detach. Okay, then now we are going to wish all beings in all directions well and happy. Above, below, and all across, no need to visualize. So the same routine, all beings, we treat them non-discriminatively, so we do not visualize. Once we visualize, then there will be contact, there will be feeling to that image. I know this person, and all the past perception, past memory of this person will come into play. And you have becoming and stuff like that. So for our routine, we don't visualize. So all beings, we treat them as 5 aggregates, as sensations. Whatever sensation you may detect, we wish all beings well and happy. A new sensation arise, all beings well and happy. New sensation arise, all beings well and happy. Okay, so in this way, a big kind of a form becoming, if a person, let's say, do experience an increment of this joy and happiness, so one may enter the first level of concentration. And now we're going to add some insight. We're going to think of impermanence, all these beings, all sensations, they appear and they disappear, arise and they pass away all the time, every moment. Okay, so no matter what happens, keep being mindful of impermanence in all activities, standing, sitting, walking, lying down, in any state of mind, sensual desires, sense fear, sense doors, fear states, or the form or whatever formless states, always mindful of impermanence, concentrated or not concentrated mind. Okay, and with that we can gently open our eyes, formally end the session, but informally still can generate right thought. All right, any questions or problems? So have a rough idea. So this one need more investigation to understand. Yeah.
According to the sister, when she says that consciousness, am I right that if, let's say, if the conscious appear, if there's no awareness, that means there's no feeling. Am I right?
Yeah, the awareness is the consciousness. Yeah.
Okay. But if let's say I am not aware of the conscious, that means there's no consciousness at all. Because this is forming somewhere. It's just that I not take note of it. With no awareness, there is no consciousness. But aware of the conscious, there is there's consciousness.
If let's say in your meditation you are sort of wakeful, you keep on repeating and repeating and repeating, and you're alert, then might be a chance that this consciousness might be slowly dissolving. Or another alternative, if let's say a person is not mindful, it could be just like dozing off. Yeah.
Yeah, let's stay. Okay, you're saying that, okay, like just now you're saying that the sister says that chak kway teow. If the word chak kway teow appear, the thought arise. Okay, but I don't follow the thought.
I cannot hear you.
Bante, okay, if just now what the sister was saying about the chak kway teow.
Okay.
Okay, if let's say the thoughts arise, chak kway teow, but I don't follow the thoughts. I just watch it and let it cease by itself. Is there still craving?
For ground-up approach, I would encourage people to actively reflect on impermanence. Yeah, if you try to watch it and see it by itself, requires a lot of skill, a lot of equanimity on our side beforehand for the mind to able to do that. Yeah.
Okay, but when the thoughts arise like chak kway teow, but that means I don't tap onto it that oh, it's delicious, it's dark, there's eggs in it. That means I don't add on. I just leave it as chak kway teow. Is there craving still?
You have to know for yourself. Yeah, it is for yourself to experience. Whether do you add in additional thought? Yeah.
But I just leave the chak kway teow as it is. So I don't add on anymore.
Yeah, as long as you passive observer, there's a chance we don't like increase the craving. Yeah.
Oh, but there's still craving.
Yeah, the active part to reduce craving is to keep reflecting on impermanence.
Can I use as my meditation word, like when I breathe in, good, and then when I breathe out, it's slow.
Yeah, that's more the samatha kind of practice. Yeah.
Can I do that?
Can, yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, anyone else?
Okay.
Yep.
Just now in the meditation session, you asked us to reflect on the 5 aggregates. How do we actually do that technically?
Okay. So like earlier on, we talked about the hairs. Yep. So the hairs, that's a kind of form, there's a certain shape to it. Yeah. So when we think of the hairs growing and falling, there's also feeling associated with the hairs. Whether you like it when the hair is young, when the hair is old, do you still like it? What kind of feelings do you have? Pleasant, unpleasant? And together, there's also this thing called perception. Yep. We give it a name. This is a young hair. This is an old hair. The image itself is a kind of perception. We may need to refer to a past memory of how hair looks like. Yeah, so that is a kind of perception. Something that the hair may not look like our hair. So this is how unreliable is perception. Then next one is mental formation. Every time we generate a new image, that is a new formation. Yes, and when we are aware of that visualization, that is the mind or consciousness.
Okay. So the process is how long do we need to generate? How long we need to go around it? Or is it to the extent that we achieve calmness? Or we have,
yeah, as long as you want. Let's say if you do it in your own free time, you can challenge yourself, see how far can you calm the mind down.
Okay, okay. The purpose of doing that is to calm the mind down.
Yeah. To reduce, that is to reduce craving.
Craving.
So reducing craving has an effect of calming the mind also.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, Arahant Sivali, he reached enlightenment just by thinking of impermanence of the hair.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, so this can be done. It's possible if you do it the whole day. But if you, let's say you're not inclined to that kind of meditation, you can switch. There are many objects of meditation.
All right.
So you can self-customize your own routine.
So the flow that I should always do that is like the same like your flow. The first, give it loving kindness first. Then after that, reflect on the 5 aggregates. Then that was using consciousness, right? Then the other one is, then we jump into the bodily sensation.
Yeah, so that is also using body consciousness.
Body consciousness, okay.
As long as we are aware of the sensation, then yeah.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, no problem. Okay, how about the rest? Any issues? If not, we're going to end the session. So we're going to do a dedication chant. Let me share screen. Okay, dedication of merits. Akasatha ca bhumata devanaga mahitika punyang tang anumoditva cirang rakhantu loka sasanang etavata ca amhihi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva sabbe bhuta sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampadisiddhya. Transfer a dedication of merits to the departed. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyatinang hotu sukhita hontu nyatayo. And aspiration. Imina punya kamena mame bala samagamo. Satang samagamo hotu yavani bana patiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we end by paying respects to the Buddha by giving 3 bows. First bow, second bow, and the third bow. Okay, so that's the end of the session. Right? Yep.
Thank you,
No
Bhante.
problem. Yep.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Bhante. Thank you. Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.